It's happened, guys. Alexander Isak has handed in a transfer request at Newcastle, and I don't know why he didn't do it maybe a month earlier, given the fact that Liverpool have brought in Ekitike. Arsenal are set to finalise bringing in Victor Gyökeres, but it's being reported that Liverpool are still looking at Isak if Newcastle are willing to sell, regardless of the arrival of Hugo Ekitike. Newcastle fans look away right now. Be sure to hit the like button, guys. Be sure to subscribe as well if you are new here. Now, let's start with obviously the main source of the news. Both Fabrizio, David Ornstein, all the big reporters confirming that Alexander Isak has requested a move from Newcastle, and it's maybe likely to happen. Now, there are quite a few clubs that have been interested in him this summer, most notably Liverpool. Another team that has popped up in the conversation is obviously Saudi Pro League team Al Hilal, who are also owned by the PIF, the investment fund in Saudi. Of course, they also own Newcastle, and if you guys remember, Alan St. Maximin was sold to Al Ahly, who are also owned by the PIF from Newcastle a few seasons ago. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, I'm going to talk about the Newcastle aspects first and foremost, because Alexander Isak he's had his taste of success at Newcastle. It might not be the major trophies like the Premier League and the Champions League, but it's still a Carabao Cup, a League Cup that was the first in a number of years for Newcastle. So he gets to be a cult hero last season. 23 goals in the league. I think it's only really Mohamed Salah that had more goals than him. He had 6 assists as well, and that's also off the back of 21 goals the season before that. Double-digit goals in the league since he's arrived at Newcastle, and it's been a slow, consistent growth in terms of what he's contributed from the goal aspect. Now, injuries, he's had his fair share of injuries as well whilst he's been at Newcastle, but I think he's also had the chance to taste Champions League football, and I think that's a big factor maybe in the move that he's possibly pursuing. He's probably experienced Champions League football with Newcastle, number one, number two, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but maybe he doesn't anticipate Newcastle to be the team to lift a Champions League with. Now, with saying that, for me, Alexander Isak is one of the best all-rounded number 9s. Like, he does it all, whether it's in front of goal, whether it's in behind, whether it's linking up, whether his ability to link up, I think people overlook a lot, and he showcased that last season quite a bit against Newcastle, and you saw it in dominant performances, especially like the one against Liverpool in the cup final. Now, with the mention of Liverpool, it will be so, I don't want to say unfair, because Liverpool have actually earned the right to be able to go around and flex their financial muscles, because they didn't do this for a long time, and they've also been successful on the pitch as well as in the financial boardroom. So I can't say that it's unfair that they could possibly land Alexander Isak. Now, as a Manchester United fan, that front four that could potentially happen, or even if it's Hugo Ekitike as a backup striker, I think with the depth of players like Cody Gakpo, I'll say one thing though, I think Liverpool have to move on Luis Diaz, and they also have to move on Darwin Núñez if they want to get their hands on Alexander Isak. Alexander Isak won't be cheap. They've already spent quite heavily on Florian Wirtz, which I think will come good. I think it will be a price tag that no one will be talking about within the next 18 months. They've spent relatively largely as well on Hugo Ekitike, bringing in the likes of Frimpong and Kerkez as well for decent transfer fees. But like I said, they have the right to flex their financial muscles in the way that they are able to, because they haven't really done it to this level over the last 8 or so years. They have had, big name signings coming in like Van Dijk, like Alisson. Darwin Núñez was a big hefty fee, but in the last couple of years they haven't been. And even when they've been successful on the pitch, i.e. the last season where they won the Premier League, they actually didn't bring in anyone in that summer before the season actually started. So they find themselves relatively in a healthy financial situation. People are always going to say, how does PSR not exist for Liverpool? It exists for Liverpool, but this is what happens when Liverpool are run like a proper club, unfortunately, for Manchester United fans like myself. And I put out a tweet earlier today, and the responses are making me laugh. I said, guys, where does Alexander Isak end up? And I love Manchester United fans because there is 99% hope, or I would say 99% delusion and 1% hope that Alexander Isak somehow ends up at Manchester United. Alexander Isak will not be ending up at Manchester United. We will not be in those conversations. Now, outside of Liverpool, I do wonder where else could he possibly go? Who else needs a number 9 like Alexander Isak, who's approaching the pre-prime of his career? He's 25 years old. Strikers tend to age, but by the time they get to 28 is when it's their peak. So he's in his pre-prime, in my opinion, and he's this good. I think of the clubs that could do with Alexander Isak. I think of course, Liverpool is number one. They've always been in that conversation. I know Arsenal fans wanted Alexander Isak. There was a lot of conversations I was seeing online during the season about potentially Arsenal getting Isak. I think now with Gyökeres potentially arriving in the next couple of days, he's set to have his medical, etc. I don't think they will sign him. I think if they get the opportunity to withdraw from Gyökeres and sign Isak, I think anybody would do that, because Isak is the best striker, I think, in the world in terms of everything he offers. His all-round play, his ability to score goals, back to goal play, his ability to link up very well, run the channels. He can, drop in deep, he can drift out wide, he's an aerial threat, he can strike the ball very well, he can, play a great pass. He can do a lot. He can do so much that some number nines can't. A lot of number nines in world football, sometimes it's just about putting the ball in the back of the net, but he offers you a dynamic approach, abnormally great, as some people will say. He's a proper number 9 for me. Obviously, there's the likes of Lewandowski, and there's Harry Kane, and there's Erling Haaland as well. I have to give an honourable mention to those three. But Alexander Isak sits there. Now, the only thing that stops him from sitting at the top with the likes of Haaland, with the likes of Lewandowski, is obviously that silverware. Now, I think of Chelsea for a destination for him. Chelsea have been in for a striker throughout the summer, regardless of the fact that they brought in João Pedro, regardless of the fact that they brought in Liam Delap. I don't think Chelsea is that likely now. They probably have the financial opportunity to do that, because Chelsea will find a loophole somehow, some way to pull it off. But they're also bringing in Xavi Simons, and they're also bringing in a centre-back as well. So that is already money that they're spending that will cost about 100 million combined. So I think put Chelsea to the side for now. Outside of Chelsea and Liverpool, I always envisioned Barcelona being a destination for him next summer. I didn't think Isak would leave Newcastle this summer. If I'm being honest, I thought he might stick it out for one more season, but I envisioned him being a Barcelona striker. Now, Hansi Flick loves a good number 9. We see it with Lewandowski. We've seen it at his time in the Bundesliga as well. And obviously, Lewandowski is probably still going to give you a great number of goals, but there's a time and a place to move on from the older players. Now, that's not me saying Lewandowski is a bad striker, guys, FYI. So I always envisioned that being a position for him. Now, the only other place that I could potentially think of is Real Madrid. Now, would Xabi Alonso want a number 9? Yes. But how do they make that work with Kylian Mbappe and Vinicius? And that is the biggest question that I have. I don't see both of them working with a number 9. It has to be one or the other. With Mbappe taking over the number 10 shirt, and now the number 9 shirt is available, I'm thinking, can Real Madrid pull off a coup to sign Alexander Isak? Because Real Madrid at their best, I think, when we've seen them dominate Europe, they had a number 9 striker. And we all know, it's no secret, guys, Kylian Mbappe is not a number 9. He's not a number 9. He prefers to come off the left channel, and if he has a number 9 to work with, which I don't think he's necessarily had in his time at club level, especially coming from PSG. He never really had an out-and-out number 9. It was always, a wide player that's being turned into a makeshift number 9. Now, between Mbappe and Vinny, I always think, Real Madrid are going to have to make a decision at some point about who's going to be the star boy, who's going to be the superhero, and who's going to be the sidekick. And I don't think either of them want to be the sidekick. They both want to be the main guy. Now, Kylian Mbappe, some people might say he hasn't earned that right to be the main guy at Real Madrid. But with a striker like Alexander Isak leading the front line, that would be a scary, scary, scary team to come against if they are able to become cohesive. Now, I think the likelihood... Now, let me just say this. I don't know where he ends up. I cannot predict where he ends up, because I think this might have been a couple of weeks too late. Now, if you guys don't know, he was not part of their early preseason tour. He hasn't travelled with them. It was reports, there was pictures coming out of him working by himself, and it was reports of an injury issue. But it's now actually come to light that he's actually requested to leave. And I actually can't remember the last time in maybe the Premier League a player has actually requested to leave their team, and it's actually happened imminently. Now, usually players fall out with the manager, or the club look to move them on, or they become a financial asset that the club can cash in on. Now, Newcastle missed out on Ekitike. Liverpool won that race to sign him. And if they sell Isak, I wonder how many other strikers are there out there right now in world football that they could bring in. I think they'd have to bring in 2 to replace Isak, because I think they'd have to bring in a number 9, and then they'd have to bring in a backup as well, especially with the departure of Callum Wilson. You wouldn't want your new striker, your only striker, to be carrying the burden of a number 9 in their first season. I think there's also a likelihood that we shouldn't write off of Isak staying at Newcastle, and actually Newcastle deciding not to sell him. Now, Newcastle are not going to have their pants pulled down, excuse my language, but they're not going to allow a team to take advantage of this opportunity and the fact that Isak wants to leave. I think they value him at a reasonable price tag. When you look at the transfer market, you look at how much players are going for, you're seeing the likes of Gittins, etc., going for 50 million plus. Then you're seeing the likes of Hugo Ekitike, who hasn't really had back-to-back consistent high efficient striker seasons. And then you look at Alexander Isak, and I think it's actually right for Newcastle to ask for north of 130 million. I think 130 million should be where they're willing to start at, but they should look to get 140, 150. Now, like I said, there's so many clubs he's linked to. Liverpool and I think Al Hilal are probably the biggest ones that he's linked to. I think it'll be an unfortunate situation if he actually left and went to Saudi. Obviously, Saudi pay so much money, but also they have PSR being implemented this season as well. So financially, they can't continue as they've been doing in terms of paying so much. They are only allowed, I think, to spend a percentage of their revenue on transfers, a certain percentage, and if they exceed that, there's fines, there's potential opportunities to lose points and be dismissed from local cup games, etc. So there are punishments in place, and obviously the Saudi Pro League are trying to implement a league where it's not being just looked at as a financial opportunity for both clubs and players. I don't think he ends up at Al Hilal. I think it's either between Liverpool or he stays at Newcastle. And that's staying at Newcastle might be the worst situation for him. Not that I'm saying that Newcastle is a bad place to be, but in terms of the fact that he's handed in a transfer request and then he doesn't leave, there's already that disintegration from fans, and it'll be difficult for him to put on a shirt and be able to step out onto the pitch at St James's Park and get that support from the fans, because the fans know publicly you want to leave. It's not a secret. So there has to be a move that happens for Alexander Isak. Whether it happens or not, that's a different conversation. I think the only team financially that could look to get him is Liverpool, but I promise you guys, if Liverpool get their hands on Alexander Isak and they play Hugo Ekitike as a left winger slash second striker, and you've got Florian Wirtz, and then you've got Mohamed Salah, who's got 2 years left. So Liverpool are setting up for world domination, potentially for life after Salah. Once they solve the issue with Konate and, they recruit efficiently for, a future Van Dijk replacement, they've already got Mamadashvili, which is their heir to the throne of Alisson. They've brought in Frimpong, they've brought in Kirkes, they got that base midfield of McAllister and Gravenberch, and then they got Szoboszlai as well. Liverpool will look beyond scary. And I will have them down as my favourites to potentially win everything that there is to win. Now, obviously, it will take some time for them to probably mesh. But I look around as a Manchester... Guys, no secret, I'm a Man United fan. But I look around at everyone and I think Man United are way, way far away from being anywhere in these conversations that these teams are in. You've got the likes of Chelsea that can be in the conversation to sign Isak. You've got the likes of Liverpool to be in the conversation. City don't really need a striker. I don't think Spurs need a striker with Dominic Solanke, but Isak is an upgrade on them. So I don't know if Spurs look to do that. But when you look at the traditional top 6, Man United are nowhere near the conversations of signing Alexander Isak. Alexander Isak, I don't think, would be attracted to joining this Manchester United project right now. So let's get that conversation out now before any United fans try to entertain the idea of signing Alexander Isak. But it's very sad to see his time at Newcastle turn out like this. I thought he would probably leave and bow out gracefully with the blessings of the fans, etc. But I think it might be a situation now where he forces his way out. Let me know your thoughts down below. Where do you guys actually see and envision Alexander Isak ending up at? Be sure to hit the like button, guys. Be sure to subscribe as well if you are new here.